there. This is Dr. Bird. I am going live again, and I might have my adorable cat Minerva might join our conversation, just FYI. Sometimes she joins me when I'm in here, and sometimes she doesn't. And so it's just easier to roll with it when she does. So anyway, today I want to talk about parts of Genesis chapter 4 and 5. And just a quick reminder, I'm not trying to talk about everything in these chapters. I'm not trying to touch on or tackle or address every single issue in these scriptures. I'm not trying to solve life's problems. I am very, very interested in talking about when the Bible talks about sex or the relationships we call marriage, or interactions that involve physical abuse, that involve intimate body parts. That's what I'm trying to talk about here. And the reason I'm doing that is lots of people talk about all the other issues in these passages, which need to be talked about and talked about more honestly. I agree. But this happens to be, in my opinion, these three topics tend to be brushed under the carpet. So I want to talk about them. So I'm not going to read the whole chapter. When it comes to chapter 4, what many people think of who are familiar with the Bible, they think of Cain and Abel and what happened between the two of them. And that's an important thing to pay attention to in the larger storyline. But that's not what I want to talk about. So what I want to talk about is what we see about this relationship that we tend to call marriage in these two chapters, Genesis chapter 4 and 5. I want to talk about what's being said about women specifically, and I want to talk about when marriage language or labels are imported into this story. Does that change things for you and the way you think about it? And the best way I know to do that, well, there's several ways I know to do that. One of them is to read through some of these passages without the marital labels. So I'm going to do that. And then I want to ask you to just focus in on what's being said about women and their roles. I want to bring your attention to the fact that most of the women in these two chapters are not named. And I want to bring your attention to the fact that it's like children are happening miraculously. Men become fathers. Sons are born to men in these two chapters. It's something to think about. I actually have a clip from my Marriage in the Bible, a discussion among friends video series, where it's like it happens miraculously. And I know that we all know that it doesn't. But the point is, the storyline doesn't give us women's names and doesn't even talk about the women actually giving birth. It talks about men becoming fathers. And so my point here is to highlight one of the things that people are being taught to think about women and are being taught to think about women's roles. And, this relationship we refer to as marriage. If all they're bringing to the story is that their uteruses are bringing forth male children, right? Then I'm not sure that we should be expecting people to internalize anything different. And it happens unconsciously for the most part. Okay, so here we go, parts of chapter 4 and 5 of Genesis. Now, the man, referring to what we refer to as Adam, right? The man knew his woman, Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. Next, she bore his brother Abel. That's it. That's all she gets until the end of the chapter. And then we get this whole story about Cain and Abel, whole thing going down between the two of them. So let's focus on that for just a second. The man knew his wife, his woman Eve, and every English translation that I have looked at says his wife Eve. It doesn't say wife in the Hebrew. It says woman in the Hebrew. In fact, let me pull it up again just to double check. Ha'adam yada et hava ishto, his woman. His woman, not his wife. Okay? They're not married in the way we think about marriage. They didn't even have a verb for it. They didn't have a name or a label to differentiate between married and not married. It's just his woman. And we get the whole thing about between Cain and Abel. And then we come over here to verse 17. Cain knew his woman, and she conceived and bore Enoch. Notice Cain's woman isn't named. And he, meaning Cain, built a city and named it Enoch after his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad. What? And Irad was the father of Mahushael, and Mahushael the father of Methushael, and Methushael the father of Lamech. So we have all these men being fathers, becoming fathers. Woohoo! Women aren't even named. Thank you very much. And I want to just very briefly, we'll do a quick little visual of this. I just think it's fun sometimes to see these things, and we're going to do that real quick. Going to look at this. It saves a little differently when I put it into Drive, so I'll work on that for next time. But Adam and Eve have three sons. By the end of this chapter, Seth comes along. Cain and Abel. Of course, we know Cain kills Abel in this chapter, but Cain, the woman isn't named, and they have Enoch. His woman isn't named. They have Arad. Women are not named. We just have a very strong tradition about naming the men. And the women are essential to the storyline, but aren't named, and primarily their role is as baby makers. It's an important thing to stop and reflect upon. Right? Okay. Back to you. And I want to talk about Lamech really quick. Lamech took two women. He took, as in the verb lachach, to take. Lamech took two women. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. Ada bore Jabal, he was the ancestor of those who live in tents and have livestock. Isn't that nice? His brother's name was Jubal. He was the ancestor of all those who play the lyre and pipe. Zillah, the second woman, bore Tubal Cain, who made all kinds of bronze and iron tools. The sister of Jubal Cain was Naamah. Lamech said to his two women, not his two wives, but his two women, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. You women of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 77-fold. I don't even know what to do with that, but I just felt like reading it. It's a very interesting thing to say. I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with all the violence and the fact that he's owning it. I don't really want to deal with that right now. Adam knew his woman again, and she bore a son named him Seth, for she said, God has appointed for me another child instead of Abel, because Cain killed him. To Seth also a son was born, miraculously, and he named him Enosh. At that time, people began to invoke the name of the Lord. So Cain's woman isn't named. All these men, their women aren't named. And I mean, obviously, Adam's woman has been named by him in chapter 3, but she doesn't even get named the next time around. It's really much more important to name the men and the names of the sons. Again, I get it. It's the patriarchal nature of the context. Yes, it is. And let's be honest about that. Let's just be really honest about that instead of brushing that under the carpet. Women's roles right now are about producing sons. And that's an important thing to think about because of the way that Scripture does unconsciously at times influence the way we think about people, men and women, and those who identify with neither or both. And if we look in chapter 5, we get a whole bunch of the same thing happening over and over and over again. And I'm noticing that Carrie Ann Chrysler, someone here in the conversation, is commenting, right? It's not like I'm the only person to notice this. I'm not the first, I'm not the last, and anyone can see this, right? Yeah, the lineage is through the men's names, and it's about them and their names. But women as commodity is also an observation that's being made here, right? Absolutely, women are commodity. They are property, and yes, they are important because of their uteruses and vaginas for giving men pleasure and giving men sons. But again, if we look at chapter 5, this is the list of descendants of Adam. Not of Adam and Eve, but of Adam, okay? And God created humankind. God made them in the likeness of God, male and female. God created them, and God blessed them and named them humankind when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his likeness. It's just so fascinating. We can read right past it and we know what he's saying, but are you really paying attention to all of the messages being communicated there? The days of Adam after he became the father of Seth, after he became the father of, right? All these women are essential to this. You don't have humanity without women. And yet they're not even being named, much less given props for delivery and gestation. Anyway, after the days of Adam after he became the father of Seth were 800 years. I don't want to talk about the years. It's not the point here. He had other sons and daughters. Well, good for him, right? Adam's woman had other children. Thus, all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And then we have the same thing over and over for 10 different generations. Seth, and then Enosh, and then Kenan, and Mahalalel, and Jared, and Enoch, and Methuselah, and Lamech, right? So we get this over and over. The story is about men. It's written by and for men. We all, many of us are very aware of this. But I want to highlight that that's the only story we're getting to see. That's the only, perspective, however you want to think about this. Women are in there. They're not being named in this case, and they're not really getting credit, actually. Not that I feel like women need to be given credit every time they have children, because it's a part of one of the things many women can do. But my point is the whole storyline is focusing around men and their sons. And I want you to be conscious of what that is communicating to you. That's my only point in this, right? There is no marriage, and men are taking women, and the women are getting pregnant and giving them sons. That's what's being said over and over again. And we will look at part of chapter 6, the Nephilim, that first part of chapter 6 of Genesis, tomorrow. So this was a short one. Thanks for joining me, those of you who did. And if you're watching this on the later, I hope you found something helpful, a new twist or a new angle on this issue about the way the Bible talks about sex, the relationships we refer to as marriage, and we'll get to some very soon in terms of physical harm that involves intimate body parts. So hang in there with me. I'll see you soon.